President, please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber continues to hear the remaining of the testimony of No Sata. And then we hear another witness, that is through TCW 845 in relation to Trapiang Tmol Dam worksite. Greffier, please report the attendance of the parties and other individuals at today's proceedings. Greffier, Mr. President, for today's proceedings, all parties to discuss are present. Mr. Nguyen Chi is present in the holding cell downstairs. He has waived his right to be present in the courtroom. The waiver has been delivered to the greffier. The civil party who is to conclude her testimony today, that is Madame Nusata, is present in the courtroom. Today we also have a reserve witness, that is to TCW 845, who confirmed that, to the best of his knowledge, he has no relationship by blood or by law to any of the two accused, that is Nguyen Chi and Kisampon, or through any of the civil parties admitted in this case. The witness will take an oath before the Iron Club Statute this morning. Thank you. President, thank you. The chamber now decides on the request by Nguyen Chi. The chamber has received a waiver from Nguyen Chi, dated the 29th September 2015, which states that due to his health, headache, back pain, he cannot sit or concentrate for long, and in order to effectively participate in future hearings, he requests to waive his rights to participate in and be present at the 29 September 2015 hearing. Having seen the medical report of Nguyen Chi by the duty doctor for the accused at the ECCC, dated 29 September 2015, which notes that today Nguyen Chi has severe back pain and dizziness when he sits for long, and recommends that the chamber grant him his request so that he can follow the proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the chamber grants Nguyen Chi his request to follow today's proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs via audio-visual means. The chamber instructs the AV unit personnel to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that he can follow the proceedings, and this applies to the whole day. The chamber now hands the floor to the defense teams. First to the defense team for Nguyen Chi to put questions to the civil party, Madame Nosata, and you may proceed, counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, Council. Good morning, Madam Civil Party. I have a few questions that I would like to put to you this morning. You are from Svay Kleng. Which village number in Svay Kleng are you from?
I do not know the number of the village. However, I know that it's Svay Kleng village, Svay Kleng commune, Krochma district, Tabong Khmum province, which is now it's referred to.
Back in 1975, do you know in which sector in the East Zone Svay Kleng was situated? The sector number?
know which sector it was in. I only know that the village I lived in was Svai Klang, and I was born there. And I was there too in 1975 before I was relocated.
I would like to ask you if you know someone who also lived in Svay Kleng and possibly still lives in Svay Kleng in village number 5. A man called Man Sen. I will ask my national colleague to pronounce the name.
The name is Man Sen.
Do you know him?
No, that name does not sound familiar to me. Even if people are living in the same village, we do not know everyone. Maybe a person is living at the other side of the village. That name does not ring a bell to me. I know other people, including Sok and Kam.
Maybe you know his wife, Elmas, and they are father and mother of 8 children. The wife's name is Elmas. Maybe my national colleague can pronounce the name as well.
The person is a house builder. His father was a Sokman, deceased, and Jamat is his mother, who is still living, and El Mas is his wife, and they have 8 children all together. I do not know who he is. I do not know that surname.
Very well, no problem, Madam Civil Party. Mr. President, I would like to refer to a few excerpts of Man Zen's statement that he gave to Eva Osman. That is document E3/7675. It's at English page 84, ERA N 00221-859, French 00293924 and 25, and Khmer 00221-853. And just for the completion of the record, he also gave a statement to the investigators, Man Sen, that is E3/5205. Madam Civil Party, this person speaks about events that occurred in 73, 74 and also 75. Events in Svay Kling in relation to the rebellion. And I would like to read a few excerpts from his statement, and I would like to ask you whether you know anything or whether you can confirm. He said that by 1975 arrests were carried out indiscriminately in Svay Kling. And he says rumors had it that the Khmer Rouge were arresting anyone connected with the White Khmer movement. Now, yesterday you also mentioned the White Khmer movement. Do you know anything about rumors in 75 that arrests in Svay Kling were made because of connections of Cham with the so-called White Khmer movement?
I heard something about it, that is about the White Khmer group, and it was the issue of the White Khmer, that the people in the village were accused of being the White Khmer, the American CIA agents, and for that reasons they were arrested. People were arrested and put on horse carts, and that usually happened at around 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And those who were arrested never returned. And that was the root cause of a rebellion that took place in Svay Klang. They were afraid that the arrest would continue. For that reason, they had no choice but to rebel. I heard people talking about that. They said men and male youth sacrificed themselves in order to engage in the rebellion. They actually sharpened their knives and swords to counter attacks to the Khmer Rouge group. My father also participated in the rebellion. This is the truth I am telling the chamber. I am telling the chamber what I saw at the time. This is the truth, and this is not a fabrication. I do not lie, and I am telling the court what I experienced and witnessed.
You said your father was involved in the rebellion. Do you know whether he was involved in this White Khmer or Khmer Saw movement?
Of course, he had to involved in the resistance, in the rebellion. Otherwise, they would end up dead. For that reason, they armed themselves with knives and swords and engaged in the rebellion against the Khmer Rouge. Because by that time, every single night, about 20 or 30 of them would be arrested and taken away by the Khmer Rouge.
He also speaks about two commune chairmen, one with the name of Ta Long and somebody with the name of Ta Yok. Do these names mean anything to you? Ta Yok and Ta Long?
I know of the name Ta Long, but not Ta Yuk.
Was Ta Long Cham as well?
Ta Yong is a Khmer person. He was the former commune chief. That is the commune chief during the Khmer Rouge regime.
The same Man Zen also stated to Eva Osman that the rebellion started sometime in October 1975 on the religious holiday called Raya. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The day of the rebellion was the day of the Raya celebration. They were planning to round up all the Cham people on that Raya day. And the plan was to round up those Cham people who went to pray in the mosque on that Raya day. That was their plan. For that reason, there was a rebellion against that plan. And the rebellion lasted for one night and one day. And there was no way that the rebellion would defeat the Khmer Rouge, because you can imagine on one side there were only knives and swords, while on the Khmer Rouge side there were guns. So it was defeated.
Man Zen and also another witness who testified in court earlier talked about the beating of drums from one village to another village, presumably in order to spread the rebellion. Have you heard, do you remember hearing the beating of the drums?
President, Madam Sivapati, please hold on. And the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. President, not an objection at this time, but just an observation. We've been criticized before about asking a witness simply to confirm their own statement. We seem to be proceeding now asking the civil party to confirm the statements of other individuals. So I would ask that counsel ask open questions if he then wants to ask to use written records of interview to refresh the witness's memory in some form. I would have no objection to that.
I agree, Mr. President, so I will ask open questions first.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I just want to make a remark. I do not recall having heard in this courtroom that a witness spoke of the beating of a drum from one village to another. What I remember is that the drum was used only in one village. I may be wrong, and in this case, I would ask counsel to cite the extract of the transcript he's referring to, because I do not recall hearing any witness talk of the use of a drum or the beating of a drum from one village to the other.
I will formulate my questions openly, Mr. President. Madam Civil Party, do you recall in that night of Raya in October 75 beatings of drums?
Yes, I heard the beating of the drum. However, the sound of the drum only happened and heard within my village and not across to another village. The drum was being beaten when the rebellion or the people involved in the rebellion was marching against the Khmer Rouge. And the beating of the drum signals the start of the rebellious activity, and to warn people to be careful and not to avoid being hit by gunfire from the Khmer Rouge side. And men involved in the rebellion were fighting with the Khmer Rouge side. They were holding swords and knives, while the women took care of their children by hiding themselves in a safer location or area, while the men were marching and fighting against the Khmer Rouge.
Do you know whether at the same time there were also Cham rebellions at Kopal and Tree Village?
No, I don't. I At that time, I did not know if there was a rebellion at Kopal or at Tria village. I only knew about the rebellion that took place in my village.
And can you tell us what it is that you saw? Did you see actual fighting? Did you see Khmer Rouge soldiers? What is your memory as to the events in October 75 in Svay Kling village?
I did not see people firing their weapons. I only saw the bullets. I didn't see actual people firing their guns.
Did you see, either during the fighting or when the fighting was done, Khmer Rouge soldiers who had defeated the rebellion? Did you see them walking in the village?
I saw them. I saw them rounded up the people involved in the rebellion in the village. They rounded up everyone, and then we, including myself, we then were walked by soldiers, and there was a long queue, and we were not allowed to stray from the queue. We had to walk in a file, escorted by armed soldiers, since they were afraid that we would flee from the group. Then we reached Precham Bridge. Then we crossed to the other side to Prech Samraung Bridge, where the men, including my father and villagers in my village, would be put in one side at that bridge, while the women were allowed to stay in the mosque or in a tobacco kiln, and the children would stay with the mothers and the women grouped, while the men and husbands were separated and placed in a separate group and detained near the bridge. So by that time, all the Cham people in Svay Klang village had been cleansed and purged, and if anyone was to stay behind, that person would be considered the enemy or the CIA agent.
Maybe you said it, but just to make sure, did you see the next day, in the morning or in the afternoon or the following days, Khmer Rouge soldiers? And if yes, can you tell us whether they were from the district or maybe from somewhere else? Do you know what uniforms they were wearing, for instance?
At that time, there were soldiers, district soldiers, and soldiers from the commune level, and there were also militia. So there were armed forces at various levels within the area. For soldiers, they wore their blue uniform, while the men who worked at the commune wore a black dress with their scarf around their neck.
Let me read to you an excerpt from what Man Zen told Eva Osman. He says, at 9 o'clock the following day, I saw an additional force of hundreds just arrived, wearing uniforms different from those of the district troops. They had backpacks and all types of weapons. They fired heavy weapons and small arms at the rebels. Khmer Rouge boats swept the riverbanks with continuous fire. Madam Civil Party, what Manzan is testifying to, has been testifying to, is that does that somehow jog your memory?
I cannot vividly recall what happened. I was 17 years old at the time when I left the Swai clan. And now I am 57 years old. So if you call me to give you vivid details of the event, I cannot do that. I can only tell you what I remember.
That's no problem, Madam Civil Party. One last excerpt of testimony that I would like to read to you. That is from somebody that who testified in this courtroom. Mr. President, that is witness Itzen, at around 1608, 8 September 2015. The question is, they had Marines, he answers as follows to a question. They had Marines, they had various types of weapons. They did not use boats to fire at us at the time because we were on land. Question, and did they have fire artillery shells into your village? Answer, they did not use only the light weapons, they had heavy weapons as well. The sounds of gunfire deafened our ears. I could not tell you whether there were different types of weapons used. I cannot draw a conclusion about the weapons. Now, Madam Civil Party, the sounds of gunfire deafening the ears of this witness, is that something that you recall as well in October 75?
Yes, I heard gunshots, and my father was hit in his leg, and from time to time I heard them firing rockets, but the rocket firing was rather scattered, and my father was hit by a rocket shard.
How do you know that your father was hit by a rocket?
Well, he told me that he had been hit. He even showed me his leg. Well, in fact, his hip. And after having been hit by the rocket, he came to see me with his wife and his kids.
Do you know how many men who were fighting in Svay Kleng village were injured or killed by gunfire, the same as your father?
No, I do not know how many, but many people were injured and many people died. Some were badly injured, or some were even dead. I cannot provide you with an exact figure. I did not have the leisure of counting how many people were injured or how many people had died. I was only thinking about my family and especially about staying alive.
Now you also testified that your father was arrested after the rebellion was crushed. How many days did it take after his injury before he was arrested?
About a half day later, he was hit around 12 and around 7 p.m. When we were at the bridge. After having crossed the bridge, in fact, he was arrested right at the end of the bridge. So this is the Prekcham bridge I'm speaking about. On the Samrang side in Krochma district.
And were you able to witness any other arrests other than the arrest of your father?
Yes. Many people were arrested. Young people who were married and single people. There were so many of them that I could not provide you with an exact figure.
Hundreds or less? Can you give an estimate?
More than 100. Maybe 300 or more than 300 people.
And was it only men that were arrested, or were there also Cham women who had joined the rebellion who were arrested?
Only the men were arrested. The women were kept in a place, for example, in pagodas or in the tobacco processing plants. They were released after 3 days. The widows were released and sent to the river, and those who had no ties with the CIA were also released and sent to different plantations, for example in Sraiville or in other places. Now, the widows were then sent also along the river.
Do you know to which security center your father was being led to after he was arrested?
My father was detained in Krochma at Tadung Bridge. And 6 months later, he was taken to Prekchi, and then we lost trace of him. Other people were detained with my father.
And they were all detained at the same Krochmar security center?
Yes, it was in Krochma district, but well, they were small or large detention centers, and people were detained for heavy or minor offenses. So at Krochmar, the prison was since dismantled and people live there, so the prison disappeared after the Khmer Rouge regime fell.
And how do you know that 6 months after his arrest he was subsequently transferred to another security center? How did you find out?
ខ្ញុំមិនមែនថា6
I didn't say 6 months. I gave you an approximate time. At one point in time, he was taken to Krochma, and it was only a year later that I learned that he had been taken there. Because some people saw him at Todung, and these people knew him well.
អ្នកប្រាំ
They were Khmer people, I was told.
And do you know if the other men who had been arrested together with him were also transferred from the Krochmar Security Center approximately 6 months after their arrest?
Mr. President.
Civil party, please hold on. The co-prosecutor would like to take the floor.
I object to the form of the question. I'm only hearing counsel use the word security center. He's used it a number of times now. I've heard the civil party refer to her father being detained, and that there were various places where individuals were detained and being transferred from one place to another, but I'm not hearing her use the term security center. So I believe that that is a phrase that's being injected into the question.
I've been hearing that word so often that I didn't see that objection coming, Mr. President. But I refer to the closing order where the Krochmar Security Center is described as the Krochmar District Security Center. So I was presuming that she meant the same thing. But I'll be happy to formulate. Madam Civil Party, you spoke about the place that your father was detained. Was that known as the Krochmar District Security Center?
They said that it was the Krochmar District Detention Center. I was not living far away from there, and I knew this center. It was located in Krochmar commune itself.
And was there in 1975 only one such center, detention center, in Krochmar?
I don't know. I only know that detention center in Krochmar district, and another center I know as well in Prek Achi, but I don't know the exact name of that security center. Maybe there were 2 or 3 of them, but I didn't know where they were located. I only knew the Krochmar Security Center and Prek Achi.
Now let me move forward a bit in time, Men of Civil Party. Yesterday you testified that after you returned from Takio, you returned to Ksak Prakles Lu, that later on you were sent to build a dam at Chinit, and then at that time you heard the firing of gunshots, and you said that at that time the Southwest cadres were fighting with the Khmer SAR. Is that indeed what you said yesterday? And if yes, how did you know the Southwest cadres were fighting with the Khmer SAR or White Khmer?
Back then, there were White Khmer, and the Southwest Zone cadres arrived, and they fought, and I fled from Chumnik to Saikrache Le village, and I worked on the Tokchro work site. During my flight, I didn't know if they were Khmer Saw or not, or White Khmer, but they were fighting each other. So indeed there were White Khmer involved because there was fighting. And the White Khmer were not mean as the Southwest Zone people who would arrest a huge amount of people. The Khmer, White Khmer, simply wanted to be free and to work in good conditions.
But going back to my original question, how did you know that it was Khmer Saw or White Khmer that were fighting the Southwest Zone forces? Who told you? Did you see fighting, or did you hear somebody speak about that fighting?
I heard gunshots, and I also heard people saying that yes, we have to escape, and we were on the Khmer Saw side, and we had to escape, and we were told that the Southwest Zone people were coming to arrest us, so I fled without taking anything with me because I was afraid of being hit by a bullet. And the Southwest Zone people were sorting out who was who.
Can you date it more specifically in time? You said when you were sent to build a dam at Chinit, then you heard the firing. When were you sent, in what year was it, to build a dam at Chinit? Was it 1977 or 1978 maybe?
It was in 1977 or 78. The Southwest Zone people arrived, it was towards the end of the regime, around 77, 78. But I remember that the Southwest people arrived around the end of the regime. Maybe 76, 77, 78. That is the year when the bloodiest year was 1977. And it was towards the end that this happened. It was in 1978 when the regime fell.
I can fully understand that it is difficult with all those years, but if I were to tell you that the clashes between Southwest Zone forces and East Zone forces in your sector was in May or June 78, would that be correct?
Yes, that's true, that's correct.
Now you said earlier that your father was involved in the White Khmer movement. Just to be sure, was that the same movement or organization that was fighting the forces of the Southwest Zone in May or June 78?
I object to the question. My recollection of the answer to the question earlier was not a confirmation that her father was involved in the White Khmer movement, but that he was involved in the rebellion. So I believe that the question misstates the evidence.
I'm not sure that I did, Mr. President, so I think the objection should be overruled.
The chamber notes that the prosecution's observation is reasonable, so the chamber is requesting the Nunchia defense to clarify this point regarding the White Khmer. So you have to distinguish what happened in 1975 from what happened in 1978. So it appears that the Nunchia Council is trying to combine both of these events.
That was indeed what I was trying to do, but I will be asking questions, clarification questions, Mr. President. Madam Civil Party, we spoke earlier about the rebellion in 1975. We also spoke about the possible involvement of the White Khmer in that rebellion. In 75, was your father himself a member of the so-called White Khmer movement?
No, he was not part of the White Khmer movement. He took part in the rebellion to fight the Khmer Rouge. And they gathered in order to avoid being arrested and taken away and killed. So they chose to die in the village itself. My father was not involved in the White Khmer movement. Only after his death, the White Khmer movement took shape. He died in the prison itself. Based on what I learned from that. Those who knew my father told me about this. They were Khmer, and the Khmer loved the Cham like their brothers because they did not have black blood like the Khmer Rouge.
Just now you spoke about the White Khmer movement in 75. Your father was not involved, clear. Before that you spoke about fighting in 78 between Southwest Zone forces and the White Khmer. Do you know whether these forces of the White Khmer in 78 clashing with the Southwest Zone forces were the same as the one that you described that existed in 75?
No. Civil Party Co-Lead Lawyer, please, you have the floor. Good morning, Mr. President. Earlier, Council Koppa said that that the White Khmer movement happened in 1975, but based on what the Civil Party is saying, in 1975, there was no White Khmer movement. She said that this movement took shape only later.
I don't think, Mr. President, she said that. She said it developed after the death of her father. But I'll move on because of the time. And I'll move to 1978, I presume, still, Madam Civil Party. And I would like to ask you the following. Yesterday, you said that you saw corpses floating in the river, and you said that some of these corpses floating in the river were soldiers, and you could see that, you said, because of the khaki color, greenish uniforms they were wearing. When you saw those soldiers, was it around the same time as you heard guns being fired during the fighting between the White Khmer and the Southwest Zone forces?
Well, it was when I was in Saikrache, Le village. We were arrested and gathered at the detention center at the Tri village. And then we were released in order to work at Saikrache Le. And on the riverbanks, we saw bodies floating, and bodies that were tied together one by one, and children were put in bags. 6-month-old children or 1-year-old children. I did not see executions, but I saw bodies floating in the river. And I saw another person by the name of Tro, who was working in the youth brigade of the East Zone, and I saw his body float, and his throat had been slit, and his body was taken away by a whirlwind. And I asked myself, how is it possible that this body was taken away like that? So that was after I was released, and that was after I was assigned to tasks in villages that were under the supervision of unit and group chiefs, and it is then that I saw these bodies floating in the river.
Just to be sure, would that be also May, June 78?
Yes, it was in 1978. That was the last year of the Khmer Rouge regime. And it was, and then right afterwards, after my 3 months in the forest, that the country was liberated, and I spent 1 month in the water and 2 months on land, and then Phnom Penh was liberated, and it was the end of the regime, the Khmer Rouge regime.
Did you actually witness armed clashes or fighting with the use of tanks, artillery, etc., between the Southwest Zone forces and the East Zone forces in May or June 78?
No, I did not know at that time because I was in the forest. However, I saw the activities of messengers of the Khmer Soul, and we learned a little bit about what happened. We learned that on one day Phnom Penh was captured, and the information was relayed to the Khmer Soul by a messenger who was riding a horse, and that's how we learned of the information.
Madam Civil Party, I have a specific question as to what you said in your interview with Eva Osman, that is E3/9307, English page 011328815, French 011284000, and Khmer 00045906. You were asked questions about soldiers from the Southwest Zone, and you said, I know. As a matter of fact, I have to correct myself. It's an interview with you and I suppose your husband, because your husband answers as follows. Why did you know? And he says, I know because they told us they were from the Southwest Zone. They called us Khmer body with a Vietnamese head. For the Khmer who lived on the other side of the river, they did not call them like that. They accused all the Cham who lived on this side of the river of associating with the Vietnamese. Was that indeed your husband saying that? Do you remember?
I cannot recall that, since this is not my statement. Maybe my husband was interviewed elsewhere and that's what he said, so I cannot confirm it.
I might be making a mistake myself, but in the interview let me ask it an open question. Do you know whether Southwest Zone forces made a distinction between Cham living on one side of the river and Cham living on the other side of the river? One group of Cham colliding with the Vietnamese and the other ones not. Is that something that you recall?
The people who were living on the east and east zone were accused of having the Khmer bodies with the Vietnamese heads, and that they colluded with the Vietnamese. As for those on the southwest side, was considered differently from the one on the east side. And that was the reason the Cham people on that side were rounded up, taken away, and never reappeared since. The entire families, including my relatives, my blood relatives and my distant relatives, they all disappeared. And only I survived because I said that I was a Khmer girl, and that's the only reason I survived. And I insisted that I was a Khmer girl, and I did it 3 times before they took it in and believed it.
កាលនឹងដៃនៅជាប់ចំណង
And at that time, my hands were tied.
Thank you, Madam Civil Party. Yesterday you were asked a question by the national co-prosecutor about having been an eyewitness to executions, yes or no. In your WRI E3/5193, on the 3rd page, I will give the URNs just in case. That's 00274704, French 00224113, and Khmer 002044445. You said, I did not witness.
Council Copper, please provide the EN number again.
Khmer 002044445, French 00224113, and English 002744704. You said that you did not witness any executions. You were not an eyewitness, you said. But you said, and I quote, I told Mr. Osman that I saw the execution as I wanted to seek justice against those murderers. Am I to understand your testimony that in order to seek justice, you said that you were an eyewitness, but in fact you have never been an eyewitness? Is that correct?
That's not my statement. My intention was to find justice for my relatives. I did not see the execution. However, I saw people who were arrested and taken away after they said that they were Cham. But I never witnessed the execution nor the throats being slit. I saw them being escorted each by an armed soldier and a knife. They sharpened their sword and knives 3 times a day. with a kerosene, not with the water. That's how they sharpened their swords and knives. And that's what I witnessed, but not the execution. As I stated earlier, I saw them being walked off the house and gone.
I'm mindful of the time. Mr. President, I had only one last subject, 5 or 10 minutes, maybe we can have a break.
President, it is now appropriate for our short break. We take a break now and resumed at 10:30. Court officer, please assist the civil party during the break time at the waiting room for civil parties and witnesses, and invite her as well as the staff of from Visu back into the courtroom at 10:30.